Well, I hope what we achieved with the Epoch project, getting people to think about how the past is an influence on today, and how today is an influence on the future.
We started to create music. There was a lot of trial and error involved in the process. And what we settled on was that we would create the music that we would do now, but as if we were in the 50s or whichever subsequent decade.
It's one of the most faithful reproductions of a 1950s studio that exists. I felt incredibly lucky with the 70s track that we were able to collaborate with Garrett Scheider from Parliament Funkadelic.
Nice, Kings.
Yeah, I think so. So like if we can like for example, we were talking about maybe like generating something with like some AI music and then sampling that.
One of the views that was expressed was like, oh, I didn't think I liked hip hop, but I like this. But then it's, what's your definition of hip hop? And it really was like a journey through time, with each room having various artifacts as well that related to that time period.
So welcome to the world's first hip hop time machine. You're going to be taking a journey through 5 spaces.
I don't know if I can get that feeling from something that I know is AI, but it's pretty convincing. Like, AI is pretty convincing.
Cool. There's the headphones if you want to wear them. Keep talking.
Yo, what's good? Here we are. Let's do this interview.
Here.
Yeah. Okay.
Lovely stuff.
So my name's Roz. I'm a hip hop and spoken word artist, and I was a project lead on the Epoch project.
My name's Easy, and I run 2 not-for-profit organisations, one based in music, one based in art.
So my name's Kingsley, I'm a producer. I work here at Inspire Sounds Recording Studio, and I've been involved in the project as a beat maker and a sound engineer.
So the idea basically stemmed from the way our collective make music. So a lot of our beat makers use a bit of technology called MPC, which is basically this 90s bit of kit, which is designed for sampling. And quite often we'll sample from records from the 60s and 70s onto this 90s MPC, transfer those sounds onto a modern Apple computer, and use kind of modern software, or often software that emulates technology from the past.
My involvement in the project came about through Roz, who's a long-time friend, musical colleague. We've also worked together on various youth projects, and it came through his hard work and this amazing idea that he had to get involved with this project, the inaugural project of Science Together, which is pairing researchers from Oxford University and Brookes University with community groups to solve a problem within a community.
I thought it would be a really interesting concept to explore with the researchers at the university.
The first stage of the project, initially when Roz brought me and Easy and himself together, was to kind of do a bit of research around each epoch that we wanted to explore. So that meant looking not just at the music of that time, but also at the culture, at significant events that were happening, and doing a bit of research, having a discussion, and basically finding out what those epochs meant to us, to help inform us on how we were going to create the music and what sort of subjects were going to be in each song.
Point on, we started to create music. There was a lot of trial and error involved in the process. We were trying to figure out exactly how we would approach the creation of the music. What we settled on was that we would create the music that we would do now, but as if we were in the 50s or whichever subsequent decade, and we would create using the technologies that were available at that time.
You know, using all of these different technologies and techniques from different times, what is it that is the constant through all of those, you know?
Love and team.
That sounds so weird when it's by itself. Just single notes.
So the first thing that we started to work on in terms of actual music was the 50s track. That was like our starting point. So after researching various books and watching videos of what life was like in that time period, we started to create various versions of what we think that the track would sound like.
So we went down to Sugar Ray's studio in Essex, which was an incredible experience. It's one of the most faithful reproductions of a 1950s studio that exists.
And the guy who runs it, Dean, was like, once I got in contact with him, was so excited. He was like as excited as I was about us going there.
The microphones to the wires in the wall, everything, the schematics for the console, all of it has been meticulously researched and put together, and I think it's probably the finest example of a studio that exists today that you can go to and create music in the style of the 50s.
I think the standout part was the actual recording process. That was just such a unique experience, watching the whole thing being set up, what kind of things were important, what the mics we used, the way that we had to send the different instruments out to their own speaker, and as if they were an instrument live in the room, excluding the drums. So we had string sections going over here, and we had bass being sent out here, being recorded through these original 50s microphones.
And it kind of forced us into thinking about recorded music in that 1950s style. Because, you know, we kind of, when we were playing around with different iterations of the track, we were, you know, we were going for the sound, we were trying to recreate the sound, but not necessarily being able to use the techniques that they used because we didn't have the space or the equipment or anything like that.
We recorded everything on about 4 microphones, and that went down to a mono signal, which was recorded straight to tape. So I think the hardest thing was basically doing it without any influence of the modern techniques that we hold today.
We tried a few different versions of the 60s track before it kind of came together with something that we were happy with. I think what I really like about the track as it is now is it captures that sound of those bands that I love from that era.
There was a lot of soul. Yeah, we were looking at soul and Motown, a lot of black American music that was really strong in that time, which has gone on to just influence so many genres of music. Obviously, because we use that music to sample in hip-hop so frequently, that just seemed like the right place to go.
With the 60s track, I think one of the most interesting things to me was, again, avoiding the use of any modern mixing techniques. And I wasn't certain going into it whether we would be able to achieve the sound of the 60s. We've got a copy of an Altec compressor, and the only reverb we have playing is a copy of an Abbey Road's plate reverb. If we look at the bass, that's a copy of an old Rickenbacker bass from the 60s. We've also got an Altec compressor on there, and we're using a copy of a 1950s Pultec EQ. And basically we're trying to keep the sound as simple as possible because they wouldn't have had a lot of technology back then to actually use.
So yeah, so it was a kind of quite an intimidating prospect to approach that and think like, I really want to do this justice, you know. This is like, if there's one track that I'm going to be proud of, like I want it to be this one, you know. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how all the tracks came out. But I think when the 60s one came together as it is now, I was like, it was a relief, definitely.
I felt incredibly lucky with the 70s track that we were able to collaborate with Garrett Scheider from Parliament Funkadelic. He's an incredible musician who really brought the sound of that sort of funky sound that we wanted to the track.
Yeah, Garrett was kind of like the foundation of that track. We built it all around his guitar playing, and then just added the elements to it around that. But he's a great musician and a really nice guy as well.
I think the first thing that Garrett laid down was the bass. So yeah, it just like, as soon as I heard that, it was like, yeah, this is a thing. Like we've got it. We've got the 70s track.
One of the biggest differences between the 60s and 70s track would have been the invention of and readily available use of multi-track recordings. So whereas they might have had a couple of tracks to play with, now studios are moving to much more larger format consoles. They were using tape machines that could do sometimes up to 16 channels. So you can hear the sort of cuba percussion in the back. We were also, given that we were able to create multi-track recordings, we had many more layers of Garrett's vocals on the hook, which again wasn't a technique that was as used as readily in the 60s.
Goddamn, trying to get out from under the foot of the man. He's stepping on my neck. Jump back, give me respect.
Again, like, I love that that kind of era of like American black culture. It's just, I think it's maybe some of the coolest people that have ever existed are from like 70s America, you know. And I can't bring that to a track, but Garrett gave us it in like spades, you know.
The 80s track was the quickest one, I think, to make. That was just, Roz and I had gone up to the upstairs studio at Inspire Sounds, and I don't even think we needed to listen to any reference tracks, because that's kind of closer to our youth. That sound is so like prevalent and throughout us growing up and stuff, so we just got some synths out and just started jamming.
Once Kingsley heard that, he was like, yeah, we need to get that like Phil Collins snare sound on there as well. And Kingsley went away and kind of made the drums.
So here I'm using Solid State Logic's modern day copy of the Listen Right compressor, and one of their native plugins, which I find really good. And you can hear the way that it basically compresses and cuts off and gates the snare is really sort of synonymous with that sound of the 80s. We're also using a gated reverb, which is again a technique in the 80s, which you hear on a lot of vocals and drums to achieve that sort of abrupt sound. The snare drum, the kick drum, and the rest of the drums themselves actually come from 808 drum machines, which again was a huge piece of technology in the 80s. So you can hear that it's like that. It really is that sound of the robotic programmed drums, which people came to love, and then influenced a lot of music after that. For example, dance music, hip hop music. We've also got a lot of synths in here. So these are copies of famous synthesizers. Unfortunately, we didn't have the budget to go out and buy the actual thing. They cost a lot of money nowadays, but there are many software instrument versions which sound great.
And I think by that time my lyrics were starting to come together as well. I knew that I wanted to talk about, you know, the kind of the emergence of crack cocaine, and because, you know, that's been such a big influence on hip hop and hip hop culture as well, and like the war on drugs beginning in that time in America as well, and the effect that had on the culture. And of course AIDS as well, like the AIDS pandemic starting then as well, and we wanted to reference that as kind of, you know, relating to the modern COVID pandemic, and kind of almost drawing a bit of a parallel there.
Kingsley smashed the 90s song. He had a really good idea of sampling the 80s track to create a consistent theme, because we actually ended up grouping some of the decades together.
In the same way that Jay Dilla and other producers like that would have taken sounds, put them in the MPC, we basically took the drums and we resampled them in the MPC using the filters and stuff to create that sort of 90s sound. We also sampled the main synth sound that you've got going on in here. And if I play the 90s song, you can hear immediately the synth sound.
Music from computers, we are the future. A new wave, new ways. Strange things change in a few days. Days the confused play.
I think for me the 90s track was it was something quite close to my heart, and really trying to focus on the music that I grew up with. So my first ever influences in hip hop came from the 90s, and so I think focusing in and saying we're going to produce a track that takes all these nostalgic parts of the music I love and just puts it into one place.
Music of the 90s was very influential on me as a young person. Like, kind of, I guess it's when I bought my first music that was like my own. I started to choose what I was listening to and stuff rather than just listening to what was on in the house and stuff like that. So yeah, a nostalgic time for me as well.
It's one of those tracks where everyone's just in the room vibing. It's just a natural, organic creation process, and that really represented where we're at and where we've been at in that time period.
The future sound is an echo of the past one. Can't begin unless you start from one. Breathe in, breathe out, a heart pump.
So the 2000s track was kind of a funny one for us because that's kind of the music we make anyway. That's the UK hip hop that we grew up on, was the sort of 2000s sound. So again, like, not trying to overcomplicate it and just keep it very like natural to the sort of music we normally make, but without using like a lot of mixing technology that we have available to us today. It's a time which it's one of the most informative parts of my life. So even just looking at the technology from things like the games consoles and the early phones to the speakers and the sound systems that people had in their homes, it was a very nostalgic process. And for me, when I hear the 2000s track, it reminds me of the sort of UK hip hop that I would have been listening to at the time.
Because I think actually kind of that era around sort of 2005, I think that was like a real, a kind of a bit of a golden age for British hip hop really. There was a lot of artists coming out and making some great music. Some great kind of UK hip hop albums were made around that time. Artists like Skinny Man and Task Force and stuff like that. So yeah, it was nice to kind of, again, to pay a little bit of tribute to those guys with that song.
When people think about the future, they often imagine, flying cars and things like that. So when making the future track, we really had to think about like what's the future likely to look like in terms of music creation. And one of the concepts that we had in our head was that in the future, AI might be a much bigger present part of creation of music.
We went to the E-Research Centre, which is part of the University of Oxford, and worked with Dave, who's an AI specialist.
I'm Dave Durer. I'm an interdisciplinary professor in the University of Oxford. So I work between engineering, science and humanities, and my personal research area is AI and music.
See, like this is kind of that, so the AI is like, oh yeah, what about this? And then we're like, that bit's cool, like maybe we can use that, but then change it.
It turns out that I have a common interest with Rawls in the relationship between technology and music. And we discovered that fairly early on in our conversations, and that's really been the driving force for this. It's been a fantastic collaboration, and hip hop is a genre that's all about that relationship.
When we started the day, I kind of had two questions. The first one was, can we make a track that will make people feel nostalgic about the future? And I thought that was a really interesting concept to work with. And then the second one was, are we going to go with sort of this kind of robotic, kind of synthetic feel to the track? Yeah, I think so. So like if we can like for example, we were talking about maybe like generating something with like some AI music and then sampling that, chopping it and you know, putting it through our process sort of thing.
David DeRaw, who is one of the researchers involved in the project, his collaboration part was to take perhaps as much as Raw's lyrics as he could provide and feed them into an AI program which would then analyze it and create its own versions of a rap / poem based on Raw's lyrics as its input.
Right. Like the thing that there's things that it don't quite get. So this is more, it's like generated more poetry than lyrics, but it's like, there's some cool stuff in there. Look at the dust settles, and the dust settles around the old feud. The two of them, fixed, eyes wide open, minds open up, eyes wide, minds wide awake. Fight for a minute, love for a minute, no limits. I'm into the human, accelerate, out of the mist. How about that again, brother? Leave a stamp on the path, forever moving, out of the mist. Holla.
Sounds like a Raw's track to me, man.
Yeah.
So that last bit describes this track quite well.
Yeah, I really like that bit. 2 ways, 1 time,
Yeah.
leave a stamp on the path.
So that he was responsible for that. And what we also did that was different was we utilised some very modern technology in the sense that it's publicly available, and we sampled AI-generated music. So there's these websites which are creating royalty-free music. I think it's for creators, YouTubers and stuff like that, to put in the background of their videos.
So yeah, it would be good if you could tell it like what you like about it. Like I like the tempo, I like the key.
I know. I wish we could, just have that little bit more refinement.
Interaction with it.
Or if we change the moods and then do a remix, will it take into account that as well?
I don't know.
So,
because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, what does it pick up on? What does it like?
It's taking. We've gone like 5 layers deep now.
Yeah,
haven't we?
it's like it knows you like that, but it don't know what you like about it. You know.
Ooh. Oh, disappointing key change. That's actually quite nice though. Yeah.
That first bit is nice.
Nice, Kings, yeah. I'll keep doing that, man. It's nice. I can play the same like melody with a lead. So we actually ended up sampling that, which was a new experience, and we also used AI speech generator, so they to contribute vocal ad-libs and even a hook.
Mystic. Solar eclipse.
Food for thought, mystic, solar eclipse, images don't mix, top slips, I still move, so you listen.
I mean, we could put that in time using Flex.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's nuts, yeah.
I think even being in the space at the E-Research Centre was quite influential on the music created. It took us away from our normal studio setting and our normal creative zone and put us somewhere that I think made us think more methodically about the music we created, and sometimes even less creatively, but more process-led.
Eclipse images don't make time slips. I still move, so you listen.
Mate, download that.
I mystics, looks, images don't just time slips. I still move. So
Broke the AI, man.
memories fade while the sun beams onto tomorrow. Memories fade while the sun beams onto tomorrow. In the hands of painters, borrowing lines from the past.
The exhibition was pulled together primarily by Roars and the researchers. They did a fantastic job. It was held at the old fire station, and I think that the venue was perfect, separated into different rooms, and it really was like a journey through time, with each room having various artifacts as well that related to that time period.
So welcome to the world's first hip-hop time machine. You're going to be taking a journey through 5 spaces designed to capture the spirit. So yeah, I took people into the time machine and gave them an introduction about the project. And then introduce them to each room. So I would take them into the room, explain a little bit about kind of how we made the track, show them a few of the little bits of technology and stuff that we had on display that they could interact with. And then it was really nice to be able to let them press play on the boombox or in the 80s room, or tune in the radio in the 60s and 70s room and stuff. Nothing is manufactured later than 1959. So it's as close as you can get to actually travelling back and recording cool, in the 50s. Yeah. Very cool, yeah. And he was so excited to have us in recording hip hop. He's never recorded any genre kind of outside of the sort of 50s aesthetic before. And he's not aware of it ever happening anywhere else in the world either. And he's quite plugged into that sort of network. So yeah, I like to make the claim I'm the first person to rap through Elvis's microphone.
So it was kind of an immersive experience that allowed people to sort of have a glimpse of that moment in time whilst listening to the music.
The overall programme behind this is called Science Together, and it's engaging the Oxford community with the universities research. And part of that is our medical sciences colleagues. So we, this morning and yesterday morning, captured some physiological signals from our bodies to see how people were responding to the music. So on the one hand, this is an interesting exercise. People find out about how their bodies respond to the music, but it also shows something about how science works in part of this discussion that we've been talking about between music and technology.
It was a great experience. I took part in it as if I wasn't involved in the creation of the project, and I really enjoyed it. I found it quite stimulating and thought-provoking, but my favourite part of it, after having gone through it as a punter, if you will, then to start engaging in discussions with people who had gone through the same experience was really insightful.
I really like the whole colour therapy process as well, because it did kind of evoke a sort of like mood in your head, and that was linked to sort of a colour as well. Yeah. So, and again, really that was surprising as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm bringing my husband back later. I'm coming back again.
I think that the journey aspect of this, that we start in the 50s and then travel through time and then emerge finally into the future, and the future isn't something where we present this is what the future is going to be, but rather we immerse you in possible futures and let people think about it. I'm very pleased with how well that's worked. Letting people loiter in the future, we've had fantastic conversations between people as they emerge.
For me, that's what art is, an expression of someone's human, like their feelings, where they are. I don't know whether AI can really recreate that, and for me, like for music and art, it should take me to a place, and hopefully that's been inspired by where the artist wanted to take you. I don't know whether I can get that feeling from something that I know is AI, but it's pretty convincing. Like AI is pretty convincing.
One of the
What do you think was set out to be achieved on this project, and do you think it's been achieved?
One of the things that still sticks in my head from when we had the first session with the researchers and kind of started building on this initial idea, we kind of came to this this notion that, you know, even going right back to the Stone Age, like the first people singing and noticing that singing in a cave sounds different to singing in a forest.
One of the views that was expressed was like, oh, I didn't think I liked hip hop, but I like this. But then it's, what's your definition of hip hop? You know, it's such a broad genre.
Us now today having software that emulates the sound of singing in a church to get that same sound, you know. And so like how we've kind of always like used technology to enhance those things that we somehow kind of have this kind of spiritual connection with, or that somehow resonate with us, with something in our souls, or something in the core of our kind of our humanity.
Surprised that we really managed to tap into the feeling of the music from the 50s and 60s and 70s. I'm more used to making music that's synonymous with the 80s and 90s and present times. And particularly I was happy with the future track, because I felt that a lot of people think about the future in terms of flying cars and all these fantasy things, but I think to be realistic about the future is to think about how human progression has come thus far. And with music, the use of AI seems to make sense.
If it does become more integrated, I see it being used more as a tool. Talking to David, who's somewhat of an expert on this subject, kind of shifted my perspective and saying that yeah, it will just be a tool, it won't replace, it's like to enhance rather than to replace.
Well, I hope what we achieved with the Epoch project and the exhibition was getting people to think about how the past is an influence on today, and how today is an influence on the future, and really think about like what we want that future to be.